Hello, welcome. It's Francis here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid you welcome. There is a subscribe button and a bell below if you want to help support my channel. And also you will be notified when I upload more videos. I normally come from Ghana country. I'm not there at the moment, but I would like to acknowledge the Ghana people. Third Plains of being the traditional custodians of the land where I'm residing. So this is a follow-on from my last ramble where I fell down a complete rabbit hole. I was supposed to be looking at the energetics of 2023, and I sort of got caught up in the numbers and then went off on a whole esoteric direction, which probably isn't a bad thing. But I didn't end up talking about something I wanted to look at, and that is one of the major transits that were going to be happening that could actually affect our energy, our energetics on a larger level than we might be aware of. So I'm going to be focusing on this video on Pluto moving into Aquarius, which will happen on the 24th of March here in Southern Hemisphere, in particular in Australia. Anywhere else in the world, it's usually around about the 23rd. And just a note, I'm not an astrologer. I don't pretend to be an astrologer. I have, as I mentioned in the last video, an increasing now number of astrologers whose work I'm finding really of interest. And I will link them all below so you can have a look at their reports as well. So, yes, Pluto moving into Aquarius. So this transit itself is generating a great deal of excitement amongst the astrological community. And the reason why is because it is a relatively rare event. And I mean that the last time it occurred, the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, it was actually during the 18th century. Between, I think, 1778 and 1798. And during that time, it was rather revolutionary and a very transformative period of time that changed the way the world viewed power, money, technology, and society as a whole. So the reason why astrologers tend to go back in time, to, especially when there's big transits, it sort of helps give some insight as to what could pave the way, returning back in order to move forward, gaining knowledge of the past and what occurred there to help direct us into the future. And this whole looking back in order to move forward is something I've been interested in for a while. And for a while, I mean, 10, 15 years, 20 years, you get to a certain age where a while seems to be like forever. And it is something that's surfacing again for me in relation to something that I'm working on behind the scenes to launch in, or to, we'll be launching it in April, but it will be going ahead in May. But again, I'm being distracted, so coming back to Pluto. Okay, so firstly, when a planet moves into a different astrological sign, to basic astrology here, it actually activates that area in your natal chart. So your natal chart, your birth chart, where that sign is. So for some people, especially those of us who are a little bit more sensitive to the energies, this could actually have quite a dramatic impact. So get out your natal chart and look to where Aquarius is, and then look at what house, and this is the important thing, what house of the 12 houses is Aquarius in? Because this will be what Pluto will be activating. If you don't have your natal chart and you know the time, place, and date of your birth, because maybe you know the date of your birth, this There's plenty of sites around the internet who will give you, you can work out free charts or engage an astrologer. There's so many astrologers out there. Find one that you resonate with. Okay, I'm digressing. Pluto. He is the Roman god of the underworld. He's equivalent to Hades, the Greek god. So the planet is all about death, destruction, and rebirth. It's about looking at things that are below the surface, the shadow. I've talked about that in the previous video. This is the interest of mind, shadow work. It's also about empowerment and complete transformation. So it depends on how you perceive this aspect of Pluto. It's one of the outer planets. So along with Neptune and Uranus, this means that Pluto is a slower moving planet, especially when we compare it to the likes of Mars and Mercury. Now, these outer planets are often termed as the movers and shakers, so to speak. And Pluto being and I know this is just for those people who are going to say Pluto is not actually considered a planet. In the astrological sense, it's still considered one of the planets. So being the furthest planet or dwarf star or whatever dwarf planet, whatever it's termed these days. This means that Pluto takes things a little step further. It doesn't just move and shape. It utterly transforms. Pluto exposes what no one has been looking at, as well as helping us to purge, detox, and release all those stagnant energies. The energies of the outer planets also move at a slower, deeper pace. Pluto itself takes about 20 years to move from one astrological sign to the other. And this year we will see it moving from Capricorn, a seed goat, which is a cardinal earth astrological sign, into Aquarius, the water bearer, which is a fixed air astrological sign. And as I mentioned earlier, it takes roughly about some 200 years for Pluto to do his complete cycle through all the astrological signs. And it was 200 years ago, or close to 200 years ago, that he was last in Aquarius. So just a little sort of by note, I see that Capricorn was a cardinal sign. These are signs which are the instigators. These sort of are ready to forge ahead with plans and attract those who can support their efforts. Sort of want to get out there, the leaders, tend to be more outgoing. The fixed signs, on the other hand, and Aquarius is a fixed sign, are some more stabilizing signs, sort of in the root of everything, sort of like having that foundational stuff and ready to sort of bloom out. And another thing to note about the outer planets before we look at Aquarius is that they're more about what is happening within the whole collective, as opposed to things that may affect us on a very personal, individualistic level. Aquarius, as I said, is an air sign associated with humanity, the collective consciousness, our social groups and institutions, how people relate to each other, and even the role that governments play, etc. And there is some talk amongst some astrologers that Pluto will now revolutionize our society because it's moving into Aquarius. Aquarius is also the sign of the higher mind. It is ruled by Uranus and science and innovation and the internet and networks that we belong to, the data, our technology, and probably more importantly too, the role of AI, artificial intelligence, and how this plays in our society. And we're beginning to see more and more of a push in this area. And like with everything, there's also a shadowy side to Aquarius. And if we think about AI, when this intelligence is coming strongly and completely from the mind and not from the body or the heart, where there is a need or a desire to analyze and continue to analyze things, as opposed to dropping more or back into the body, back into the feeling of things. Yeah, I hope you can actually start seeing the difference between these two: the head thinking, body feeling. And I feel that we're beginning to see this as modern appliances or gadgets are steadily removing the sort of humanistic involvement. Cars are telling us how to drive themselves. It's making it easier for us. Sometimes things like Pluto, below the surface things. And on a more personal level, the house that Aquarius is in, as I said, this is where Pluto will activate, asking us for total transformation. It's time to deal with the dirt that we may have swept under the carpet once and for all. Because Pluto transits are a call for ultimate authenticity and to truly embrace even the more shadowy aspects of ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And notice how I'm not saying to remove, to transform, just embrace, just accept that we aren't all love and light. There's also a shadowy aspect to Pluto, and that relates to it being on the sort of power victim axis, how we relate to power. Now, as I said, the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was back in the 18th century, and huge transformations took place. This was the time of the Industrial Revolution. It was the so-called Age of Enlightenment. It's also the time that both the French and the American revolutions took place. So will it be the same this time around? Some astrologers are saying yes. It'll be interesting to just see. So what's also interesting about Pluto moving into Aquarius in March is that it's actually going to be moving in and out of Aquarius throughout this year, and then retrograding back into Capricorn. So in March, it will be in Aquarius for about 3 months until the 11th or 12th of June, before retrograding, giving us the opportunity to reflect, review back into Capricorn. Only then to move, to ingress into Aquarius around January 22nd next year. And then it'll be in Aquarius again for about 9 months. And then around about the 3rd of September, I'm using Australian times or dates, it retrogrades back into Capricorn again until around about the 19th or 20th of November next year, 2024. Pluto will finally move into Aquarius for good and stay there for the next 20 odd years until about March 2044. So it's almost like it's going to give us a bit of a taste first off this ongoing journey. And as I've mentioned, Pluto in Aquarius is almost a time to expect to unfold a new era of transforming toxicity, especially in the realm of politics, humanitarianism, social justice, science, technology, social media, the internet. And things are starting to bubble up and people have had enough and they really want to transform. Additionally, this transit will also affect our notion of freedom and free speech. And so there might be a sort of revolution theme surrounding our relationships with power and control. A shift. But remember, it's not just an individual level, it's more on a collective consciousness. Are things coming back into more of an alignment with more humanitalistic, no, it's not going to work, but more sort of like perception, more shift from what we have seen, this build-up of power and greed, to one of distribution. We are sort of bringing everybody up, so standing, suppressing others. Who knows? So while retrograding in Capricorn, Pluto is going to go back and forth. Pluto will tend to force us into being honest with our goals, especially in ways that we are self-sabotaging ourselves. And just because a goal has been a goal for a long time doesn't mean that it's necessarily on the right track. We can change. Things, situations change as the environment around us changes. And clinging to our already laid plans because we are in fear of change, or we are in fear of starting over, or will not end in us feeling good about our accomplishments. And this too can also be seen, as I said, Pluto is going to be highlighting areas in government. We may see a lot of shifts in ideas and policies and directions there, because changing or hanging on to, say, an election promise made a year ago, the world's changed so much. Isn't necessarily we've got this word back flipping, maybe not necessarily back flipping, it may simply be realizing the need that original idea is no longer congruent as to the environment we live in. That they need to refocus, regress, sort of shift that, review it to produce something different that is more in line with what they want to achieve. Hopefully for the benefit of all of us. Get that sort of divine insight into Parliament and get into governments. I live in hope. So allowing Pluto retrogrades to point out our weaknesses, especially in these plans, these goals, is actually a good thing because it puts the control back into our own hands. That's what people seem to overlook. It doesn't feel good, I guess, to see at the error of our ways. This is our ego, but it does give us the opportunity and the power to transform our negative behaviors and ultimately end up in a better place. When Pluto transits back into Capricorn, it reveals Capricorn's shadowy things. And similarly, Pluto's transit through Aquarius may highlight the darker or more shadowy sides of Aquarius, especially around, say, problems involving around emotional detachment, rebellion and futurisms appearing on the horizon, like a deluded perception of a new future, as opposed to something that's a little bit more tangent, a little bit more. And so when Pluto first moves into Aquarius in March, it's almost like it's going to give us a taste of what we can expect later on. So it moves backwards and forwards, and each time it moves into Aquarius, it stays there a little bit longer. First time in March, it stays through there for about 3 months until June, and goes back into Capricorn. So back into Capricorn. Then in January next year, or later this year, it moves back into Aquarius, stays there for another 9 months before going back into Capricorn. And finally, it moves completely into Aquarius, giving us a taste of what we can expect. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense. As I said, I'm going to list below the astrologers that I found this information from, that you might want to check out. I know some of them are doing a lot more videos and blogs because of all these energetics. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, help support it if you're interested, and I hope to see you in our next video. Blessings.